Hey everyone, welcome to Pure Love Talks. This is season 2, episode 15, and we're continuing on with our second part of a 4-part series, Raising Woke Kids, and we're talking about health and society as a part of the RSM, which is the Reverse Sexualities model. And we'll have a little picture up of it. And so, when I was thinking about health and society, we were talking about this a little while ago, I see this as a really huge part of where kids get their messaging, because we're talking about health, and we're thinking about health in a broad sense and using a healing justice framework. This broad sense about learning about our bodies, learning about sex, learning about relationships, communication, how we interact with one another, empathy, like all of these things, right? And then how it's connected to society, right? Because who you are, where you live, what you look like, the family you come from,
the people you interact with.
Exactly. All of that has, you know, some shaping or implications around how you get information, how you live in the world, and how you have relationships, right? And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, and that is mostly when we think about talking about sex. What do people usually think about when we think about talking to kids about sex?
Pregnancy and STDs.
Right. So it's about the scary stuff. It's about deterrence. You know, don't do it because, and you know, I mean, that I can understand that as a parent. It's like this fear, right? We constantly, if you've been watching Pure Love Talks, we are constantly talking about fear-based approaches to sex education, and not that the fear is wrong. You know,
it's fine to have fear. It's healthy.
Yeah, it's a reality. It's but we don't want to lead with that fear, because the fear doesn't give any information, right? And so when we think about how our children are in society, we can tell them one thing because we want them to believe the best and we want them to have the best and all that. But the reality is, it's like telling them the truth and arming them with information, even if you don't think your kid is in that category. So for example, when we're talking about teaching our kids about LGBTQI issues, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex issues, that oftentimes we think, oh, well, my kid doesn't need to know about that. Nobody in our family is gay or anything like that. So you think that is not relevant. And what we're posing is that it's all relevant. It's all relevant. Go ahead.
And I was going to say it is relevant because even if, you know, you don't think that your child may be a part of that community, they, you know, still need to know about people that they live around, people that they're going to be interacting with. You don't want them to be it's almost not telling your kid about black people, oh, they don't need to worry about that, and then they see a black person and they're like, what? This is exactly. You would rather your kid be aware and be like, there are different types of people.
Exactly. And that doesn't mean that you're promoting anything, actually. What we know is that the more information people have, children have, the better equipped they are and better decisions they make, actually. So when you don't give them information, it's actually when we end up making really poor choices, because we have nothing to go on and we have no one to ask because we're terrified, right, of asking. So the information doesn't propel them to go out to have sex or be gay or anything like that. What it does is gives them a wider sense of the world, the society that they live in, and know that there are choices, there are major oppressions, that those things interact with who we are every single day. And so talking about this health and society really opens up, or thinking about it in a broad sense, really opens it up to talking about everything we deal with in every single day life. So I'm thinking about walking now with his diaper.
He's going through the phase of refusal to wear his diaper and wanting to be nude at all times. So we're kind of being forced to aggressively potty train right now. So
he's so adorable. So, but the thing is, like, I could remember a moment or a time when that's just not cute. Right now, he's, you know, not even 2 yet.
22 months.
Right,
yeah.
and it's cute, right? And then, but we can take this opportunity, even this cuteness, to talk about privacy or private time or something like that. And even if he's not getting it, we're getting used to having the conversation about bodies. Like, sometimes he'll come up to me and want to pull down my shirt or pull up my shirt for my belly button. Has a thing with belly buttons. And I'll say, you know, that's my privacy. That's my privacy. But then I think about, we said this in another episode before, I think about the moments when we're giving him raspberries on his stomach, and I know that he is trying to do the same. So there comes a point where, you know, we're really talking about, yeah, his agency, and he shows us his agency. Like, he shows all the time when he's like, no, he's very clear about that.
Yeah, when he says no, he's very just like,
yeah.
And we listen. So, you know, we're teaching him that, you know, his voice does matter, and his opinion matters, and that he has power, at least over himself.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also thinking about, I think about this constantly, about how as children we all learn. I think when we're born into our families, or we're adopted into our families, or we are raised with our family, that these are the people essentially that are our first experience in relationships, right? And depending on what era you come from, that changes. That completely changes from getting no information whatsoever, or even having a dialogue with parents, really having this top-down approach, to it shifting right now. But that knowledge completely shifts, and if our family is the first one and they're not talking about things, you kind of have to guess, you know, guess things. And there was a time where kids can even ask questions about that. So even though, I keep thinking about, even though you might be a parent that is talking about proper body parts and all of that stuff, like, are you explicitly, like, are you, like, talking about relationship stuff, like how friendships are built, how they deal with jealousy or anger, how they just deal with any emotion, because those are the emotions that they bring into friendships and connections. And I think sometimes that's where we fail. Yeah, I'm thinking about the webinar we just saw today.
Oh, the positive parenting.
Yeah, which was really good and had a lot of great tips in there. And it made me think about the tips were so simple, but we don't think about the ways that this person was talking about child rearing with children, because it makes us, it puts us in a position of seeing our children as growing beings that have their own agency. That's the thing, because it's hard, because the educator was saying, like, we're at the place where we're like, I'm the parent, just listen to me because just it is, because I'm busy at work and this and that. But really, the kids are coming into their own, and that's been really shut down a lot because of life. And
she was saying a lot about free will, and about how, you know, naturally as humans we have free will, and that's where a lot of the power struggles come from, because they're trying to exercise it, and then we're trying to shut it down at the same time.
Exactly. And I was like, that's right. That is so right.
They're trying to be independent, and we're like, no. Right. Not yet.
It's like, be independent, but shut up. But shut up, you know, and it's like, that is so true, and it was just
confusing sometimes.
It is confusing for them. So I catch myself, we were literally watching Positive Parenting, and then Joaquin went under the bed, and I was like, Joaquin, get out of it! And I'm like, I'm watching a thing about not yelling, and I'm saying, Joaquin, get out from under my bed, you know, and it's just like this relearning of, you know, stuff, and thinking about power, power dynamics. And I talk about power dynamics within, you know, adults and children, but even in this rearing way, she made it like crystal clear as to, like, it basically is a power struggle. So Are you going to engage in a power struggle, or are you going to teach a lesson, or are they going to get a consequence, depending? You know, like, it was very good. I recommend Positive Parenting. Yes, so it is like this, it's a bigger conversation, as we always talk about. It's not like, I think that we can't talk about sex without talking about our relationship to the world. I always said that when she was little, like, talking about sex had to be in conjunction with talking about her being a black girl, her having a parent at the time who was a lesbian. You know, like, those things alter, shape, and shift how the other world sees us, her, make assumptions, how she can connect with other people, all of that stuff. And so sometimes we don't see that connection very well. We also tell our children stuff and then actually act in a different way in front of them, so that's also confusing, right?
But when we also talk about health, it's not just the physical part of it. We want to include emotional, the mental, and all that, because all those things go hand in hand when it comes to relationships, when it comes to self-image, love, sex, friendships. You know, that all comes into play, and it's never an isolated, you know, factor. They all come into play to create, you know, how you deal with other people and how you deal with yourself. So I know that that's also important, to have emotionally intelligent children, as well as, you know, raising kids who know their body parts and how things work, but also not just their personal bodies, I guess, because, you know, like, just know that, I mean, if you don't want to go into, like, the extent you want to go into it is your business, but, you know, just letting them know that there are different types of bodies, you know, because I know, like, for some people, it may be a shock when they first see, like, if you're in elementary school and you see a kid in a wheelchair or with arm braces, and you're just like, what's happening, you know, like, I mean, of course, there's always going to be some type of, like, oh, like, but, you know, it's still good to have that knowledge. And something that pops in my head, that keeps popping in my head, is curiosity killed the cat. But then I always think, I'm like, but they never say information killed the cat. You know, I'm just like, the reason why the cat got killed is because they didn't have information. So
information didn't kill the cat.
Yeah, it was the curiosity. When you have no information, you're curious. You're going to go doing things maybe sooner or in a different way than you should be. And if you had the information, it would have gone differently, maybe.
Yeah. When you said about the emotional intelligence, like, it's like, it's also like about the way we gender emotions and feelings and stuff, you know, like, even like Joaquin right now. And I know people, I think because of the family that we have, right? Out, queer, child, trans, you know, grandparent, and that we don't really regulate gendered clothing, you know, and so I'm sure people have a lot of opinions about that. Don't care.
Everyone has an opinion.
But, like, we want to make sure that Joaquin has a range of access to emotions, you know, like, when he cries, it's like, we don't want to say, don't cry, even if we're trying to soothe. We're just like, yes, I understand that, how do you feel? Is that sad? And he'll just start talking in his baby talk to be like, bah, 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 da, 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 you know, saying, yeah, telling us what happened. And he's just expressing. So he gets to just let it out, and then boom, he's okay. Right? But the act of being like, you know, shut up or stop crying.
Yeah, it bothers me when people do that. Like, I understand, like, there are times where, like, if they're having a tantrum or something, you know, then people would say that. But I'm like, when he's upset about something because he's a baby and he's upset because he doesn't understand, like, I hate when people are like, shut up, or you're a boy, stop crying, you shouldn't be crying, like, man up, grow up. And I'm just like, he's literally a baby. Yeah. So I'm like, and I already can tell that he's an emotional child. So yes. I know that there's going to be lots of hugs and lots of, like, back rubs and explaining. And so I find different ways now to help, you know, calm him down and still acknowledge that he's upset and not, you know, dismissing his feelings. Like, now, recently, what helps to calm him down is I hold his hand sometimes. Like, if he gets upset, I'll just take his hand and then rub his hand, and then he'll calm down. Or he'll look at me, and then I'm like, I know you're upset, and da-da-da-da. So, you know, he just needs a lot of affection, lots of hugs and kisses.
But that's going to be so good for him in the future, because, I mean, you know, just like denying those emotions, you know, I talked a little bit about this on, I did a post the other day, because the other day was Go Topless Day, and so I did a post about some stories about being a kid, and a story when I was a young mom about breasts, you know, and talked about when I was a kid, I remember the day that I couldn't take my shirt off in public, you know, like to get under the sprinklers and stuff. And I was with my god sisters at the time, and they were younger than me, and it broke my heart. Like, I was devastated that I could not do that, and I was like, why? And it was because you're getting older. And I just didn't quite get what that meant and stuff. And thinking back on it, I mentioned this in the post too, that it reminds me of this this song from Dar Williams, and the song is called When I Was a Boy. And what she does is she talks about when she was a kid, she remembers, you know, being free, topless, skinning her knees, climbing trees. And so she talks about it as if, you know, when I was a boy, I miss being a boy. I used to do all of these things, but then I got older and things changed. And then another part of the song was about a boy, opposite, you know, saying when I was a girl, I used to pick flowers and cry with my mother, and then I got to a certain age and I was not acceptable anymore. And I love that song because of it, because it shows that gender roles and patriarchy obviously adversely affect, you know, women, femmes, trans women, you know, genderqueer, trans people, but it also affects cis men in a different way. So nobody, it's just a overall fuckery.
Yeah.
It is, and people are not able to express themselves, and just like giving them the platform, just the platform to discover things and to learn and to ask questions. That is like the best thing, and everything is a teachable moment. There's so much movies, commercials are teachable moment, for crying out loud. There's so many things that are expressed in what body types are acceptable. Why don't we see darker skinned people on TV? What is going on now that we never saw trans people? Well, we saw a little bit of trans people. There used to be psychopaths on TV, but now the narrative is changing. Why is that? Like, those are conversations.
There was one time I was at my grandmother's house, and she's always watching Telemundo and stuff, and there was a commercial they did with the whole family was black, and they weren't just ambiguous black. They were like brown to dark skin. The mother had an afro, I think. Like, it was just like, that was the first time I've ever seen a nuclear black family on, you know, a Spanish channel. So even now, like, I'm 30 and I'm still like, oh my God, I've never seen that before. Like, and so again, commercials and everything is teachable. Like, if Joaquin were older, he'd be like, why is that weird to see a black family on TV? And then I'll be like, because blah, 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 blah.
And if and I often say, like, you don't have to know the answers, because there's always libraries, and there's Google, and there's all sorts of ways. And if you're exposing yourself to different kinds of people in different communities, because you genuinely want to learn about folks,
information gets exchanged.
Yeah, absolutely.
Experiences get exchanged, all that.
I mean, and other than like the things that we often talk about, it's just like, teach kids the right names to their body parts. Don't make them sit on people's laps or make them hug anyone. Give them choices, right? Because it's interesting. We want them to learn how to, you know, we want them to learn that their body is their own, but in the same breath, we push them to do things. Even we talked about this the last episode about eating, making them eat. You know, it's like, your body's your own, but if you don't eat that, you're going to leave the table.
You're in trouble. You know, like a lot of people, when it comes to survivors, like, oh, well, why didn't you just say no and stuff? And then if you think about it, it's like you had a lifetime of being told that your no's didn't mean anything. Like, especially when it came to older men or just anybody, or over your body, like, I don't want to wear this. Oh, well, I don't want to eat this. Oh, well, I don't like this haircut. Oh, well, I don't want to cut my hair. Oh, well, I don't want to hug that uncle. You have to hug them anyway. So you have a lifetime of you saying no, and people are just like, I don't give a shit that you're saying no to me. You're going to do it anyway. So, you know, that may become ingrained in you, and it's just like...
Yeah.
Not saying that that's, you know, what everyone's thinking, but stuff like that. I think about stuff like that, like being a woman, and like not personally, but in general, you know, a lot of women have had their nose ignored. And that's one way to teach them stuff like that, is letting them know that they are allowed to, and that no is a complete sentence, and that I understand it. You don't have to explain. You can just say no, and I understand. Like, Joaquin had a play date the other day, and the little girl's mom was like, oh, you know, like, hug, and her daughter went up to hug, and Joaquin said no, and I was like, okay, baby, that's fine. You don't have to hug her. That's cool. Like, I didn't make him feel bad. Like, oh, come on. I was just like, okay, baby, that's fine. You don't have to hug. And I just left it alone, you know. I'm just like, all right, moving on. So I don't want him to feel bad for being like, I don't want to do that.
Right. So I think I started telling this story in another episode, but this continually makes me think of, you know, so like, how does like health and society interact? And I think we've been saying a lot of the ways that it does, but in one particular way. So people of color and white people have pretty much different experiences. Experience space very differently. I know that as a child, when Mandy wanted to go to someone's house, going to a black child's house or a Latinx child's house was very, very different to me than her entering into a white home. Everything shifted, right? Because it was layered with so many other things. And so when I think about how we talk to our children, because we want our kids to be like, everything is wonderful, we got the fairy tales and all of these things, but the reality is that not everybody gets that privilege or that pleasure to not exist in oppression. So when I think about when white children and children of color interact for the first time, and especially depending on where they're interacting, it's really interesting to watch. It's really interesting to watch. And if that child has no understanding of race, or I mean, if they're really little, I can understand, but I'm saying like the ways in which white children show up in space or in play little spaces, I have experienced them very differently from children of color. Because, and this is generalizing here, but when I saw this interaction for the first time with my own grandchild, you know, my own grandchild, it was like there is a heightened like nervousness and fear, right? Because you think something bad is going to happen, and that the kid is going to get blamed for something, and you just have to be on your toes. It's almost like that thing. Like, I remember my mother being like, you better act right, you better, you know, because you're representing, right? You're representing, and that interaction that they have is going to be different. So are we talking about different, that everyone is different, like everyone, the way they come at things is different. If you come from a particular family, the simply saying that being a nice person is good and that everyone should be equal, that's also nice, but there's so many layers under that. And how does that show up? How does that show up? Yeah.
And I really I want to go back to how harmful I feel like it is when people are like, I don't see color. Because I'm just like, it's always the same color of person who says it, and it's because you've never had to. And what a privilege it is to not ever have to think about that. Like, your safety, anything, just anything. About walking into a building, leaving your house, like anything. Making a phone call, telling somebody your name, even if without even seeing you, just telling someone your name, that could be enough to be discriminated against. So it's like, saying things like that is erasure, I feel like.
Yeah. So it definitely really opens up what you're teaching your kid in your immediate social circle, and then outside, and then how are you modeling what interconnection is, and how you communicate back and forth. Do you have an open space with your kid? Are you exposing them to books and programming that is, you know, like diverse, my favorite word, but expansive, you know, like a very expansive, whether you're talking about different religions, different genders, sexual orientations, races, everything, like. And that's, you know, I mean, that was basically her entire library was filled with like all different, and I'm trying to, hack up Joaquin's library as well. Getting some really good books from. I'm trying to get stuff from around the world. You know, like this is the way that we give them all the information, and just keep giving them information, and an open line of communication, I think, is the best thing. Because this is a huge piece. How do we function in society? And the way that we usually do that is by like how we work in the world, a capitalist view about what are we going to do. So we often think about, that's Ray. We often think about like how we're going to get schooled so that we can get a job, so that we can contribute to society, and we really don't spend a lot of time talking about how we actually function in the world. How do we work in spaces? How do we get on the train with people we don't know every single day? How do we manage our emotions? Those are the things that get us, whether you want a job or you're trying to get a relationship or anything, like those are the everyday lessons, I think. I know those are the everyday lessons. Also, like, do we talk to our kids about different kinds of relationships? I think that we often stick with the heteronormative perspective and stuff, or monogamous perspective. Again, this is not telling your kids, hey, polyamory is the way to go. It is to say that there are some people that are monogamous, there's some people that are polyamorous, there might be some other things I don't even know about. There are different ways that people interact in the world, and really and truly, these ways that we interact are also represented in the animal kingdom. So these things are not anything that humans have just concocted. It's something that's
nothing new,
is innate in us, I guess. And so there are many species that are, have more than one partner, or people who are monogamous, that they pick one partner and they stay with that one partner for the rest of their life. So there's a lot of ways to talk about different kinds of relationships and how we interact with one another, that it's not just boyfriend and girlfriend, and there are many ways. And you were talking about bodies, and I was like, tell them that they're different bodies, and I was like, yeah, tell them that they're different bodies, and that bodies change, sometimes by themselves and sometimes because people change them, so everybody's different.
Because I know a lot of the kid shows that Joaquin watches, they might show a kid with arm braces, there's a kid in a wheelchair, there's always different mixture of colors and races and stuff. So I like that about his shows, but I also like shows that don't really have humanoid type characters in it as well, like Storybots. They give lots of information, there's lots of singing and colors and all this technical stuff, but it's not really focused on human stuff, so it's not girl boy, right. It's not polarized. So I know I like shows like that it's not really come on boys and girls, or you see I like doing this with my daughter, I do this with my son. Right. Some shows it's you can tell they kind of steer in that direction, but I like stuff where they just leave it open. Again, on Storybots, they have kids on there talking about oh, what do you want to be when you grow up, and I
love that show.
The kids were just saying all random stuff, and they're like, wow, that's great. What color do you like letting them just decide and be who they are, and not saying that it should be this way, or do you think you should try something else, or what about this, so I like that the kids are they're answering their own questions about their lives and themselves.
It's so cute. I'm also thinking about older kids or tweens, there's so much content out there for young people, and most, I would have to say, even not even watching them, most of them have completely incorrect information about relationships and how they're formed. That's a great opportunity to get on the show that your kids are watching and know everything that's happening in there, and not give them a lesson on, the things I think that this is the mistake that usually happens. It's about, that is sexist, patriarchal, blah, 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 that's not good for girls. That's talking at, top down, rather than who's your favorite character on that show? Why is that your favorite character? That's interesting. Oh, you get to learn things about your kids without even giving them a freaking lesson. They get to tell you about themselves. They get to tell you things in different ways when you're interested in what they're watching, and even if you don't agree with it, you might think it's garbage. You can watch that garbage and you can find a lesson in that garbage. You can find it. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. Yes.
I try to think about it like that too, because I know I've had my fill of children's shows already, but I can always refer back to it, and I know it's something that he'll remember, and you know, he can use it for reference, and he'll be like, oh, and I'll be like, oh, like I'll sing a song, like let's see, for example, like if we're doing something and like the mommy on the bus says shh, 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 or something. So if he's screaming a little bit too loud, if I'm on the phone or something, I'll just go shh, 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 and then he goes shh,
right,
and then he gets it, and then like he'll be like doo doo doo, and then walk away because the subject has been changed. So he forgot, like, oh, I forgot about screaming because we were singing that song together. Now I'm quiet and I'm gonna go do something else. So I used all the videos because I know that he responds to the music and everything. Yes. So if I sing it, he'll be like, oh, that's what that means. Or like the bath time songs, like we're in the shower, they have songs about taking a bath, and I'll be like, look, we're washing our toes, and I'll do it, and he's like, oh, like you saw the video too, like you get it. So that always helps because he's like, I see the reference, I understand the thing, and now we're doing the thing. So I always love incorporating his favorite show or favorite book and teaching him stuff or reminding him, like in Goodnight Moon, that's one of his favorite books. So like because we read that so much, we go outside and he'll be like moon if he sees it, or star, or the bowl, just stuff like that. So I'm like, everything is a lesson, even if it's not like a long-term lesson. It's just, well, now he understands that is the moon because it was in the book or something.
You also mentioned like the stories that have like kids in wheelchairs and things like that. And what I want to say about that too is like, yeah, now visibility is always great. I mean, like I love that there's more visibility, but it can't stop there. You know, like having the black kid in there and the kid in the wheelchair and whatever other kid that is deemed for diversity's sake is not enough. Because saying everyone is equal and, you know, everyone deserves a shot, okay, great, but then that kid's life is very different from another kid's life that can walk and run, right? Completely different, right? So these are lessons that are really important because it really shows, it can show empathy, and it can show appreciation, and also like a gratitude, you know, because it's like you can never understand what it feels like to be a person of color or a person with a disability, a physical disability, a mental disability, all of those things, but we can learn as much as we can and be respectful, supportive, and also in solidarity with. And these are nice lessons to learn as you're growing up. It's not something that you learn once you get to college, because now, oh, these other people exist in the world?
Empathy is the lesson too.
Right. So there's a lot of ways to incorporate this broad, like, you know, topic of society and health. And we'll be showing you some books, and I'll think of some movies too to add to the resource list. But think about the ways in which you have or have not talked to your kids about health, which includes holistic sexuality information and society, the world they live around, and everything, especially what's happening with the Black Lives Matter, what is happening in the world, you know, like what are their opinions, what do they think about it, how do you incorporate talking about sex education and current society. So many ways to talk about it. But if you have any questions, please send us an email. If you have any suggestions on show topics, let us know. And we are 2 episodes away from the ending of season 2, and we're really excited for season 3 to be starting in January or maybe February, I don't know.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share. You know, we look forward and love all the love that you guys give.
Yes, thank you so much, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.